of the Association of Healthcare Leaders and the San Diego uh, Organization of Healthcare Leaders, I would like to welcome you to our second session for our Board of Governors exam preparation. And thank you for joining us today, and we really appreciate your participation. Today we will be covering the management and leadership body of knowledge, which is 26 points in the exam or 13%, and the business body of knowledge, which is 16 points or 8% in the exam. So before we will tackle or dive into the main topic of this event, we would like to welcome also the members of our committee for the advancement committee. So next slide, please. So these are the committee members for CAL who made this review session possible, who dedicated their precious time in preparing this event. And next slide, please, for the San Diego Organization of Healthcare Leaders. So these are your volunteers in San Diego chapter. So we are ready to dive into the management and leadership. However, I would like to welcome or bring in Kelly Flannery, our president of the California Association of Healthcare Leaders, to give us some welcome address. So take it away, Kelly.
Thank you, Michael. Happy Saturday, everybody. I certainly welcome and commend you all for giving up some time on a Saturday to work on preparing for the Board of Governors examination. And I also want to acknowledge one of our two sister ACHE chapters, Seoul. Welcome to Seoul, and I'm glad that we're partnering with other chapters to offer this really important training. So a few things that I would share with you all is in my career history, I've had different areas of focus. And so, when I started preparing for the Board of Governors exam, I had some budgetary responsibilities, but not overwhelming. So I never deemed myself, a subject matter expert in, finance and healthcare finance. So I spent a lot of time reviewing my finance book from my Master of Healthcare Administration program. And I went into the exam thinking, okay, I've prepared as much as I can, and I've gone through some of the ACHE prep stuff, and I've certainly, used my books and notes from my MHA program. And if I don't pass the exam on the first try, I wasn't going to beat myself up. It's just an opportunity to take a break, go back and focus on the areas that maybe I didn't score well enough on. But luckily that didn't happen. I passed on my first board exam, and of course I was elated. But you don't have to have 100 points, which is obviously helpful too. So not that you can miss everything and pass, but so I'm sharing that just for a little bit of reality check, and just focus on all the modules, do some of the practice tests, and go in with an open mind. Get some sleep the night before, definitely, but just go in with an open mind. And I believe you're allotted 6 hours, so you don't have to rush to get it done, and just think about the questions. And they're all multiple choice, which I'm sure that the team here has already shared with you. Nothing essay, but just be engaged with these sessions that we're offering and ask questions. And I think it would be great for all of you to take the exam and get closer to having the fellow status for ACHE, as part of your signature block. It's for me anyway. I actually put more value on FACHE behind my name than MHA. So anyway, you have my full support. This is a great team that's helping you through the preparation course that we offer through Cal and either ACHE of Southern California or Seoul. And have a good day. And I'll always reach out if you have any questions. And I think with that, I will turn it back over to you, Michael.
Okay, thank you, Kelly, and I appreciate the tips for that. Taking the exam for our participants. So thank you very much for your time today, Kelly.
Okay, have a good day, everybody. Bye bye.
So next slide, please. Okay, so I will turn it over to Rick for BOG exam test taking tips.
Morning. We've all taken a lot of tests over our lives, I think, by the time we've reached this point. And we all have our different ways of doing it, but these are just some of the recommendations we've gotten in the past from people who've gone through this and then taken the test. So I think the top one, and Kelly referred to it, is relaxation. You've got 6 hours. Do not let yourself feel like you're rushed. You'll have plenty of time. So, take the time. I found success in treating each of the questions not as multiple choice, but as a series of 4 true falses. And that's a good way to keep yourself organized, particularly on some of the long ones. And even if you can't eliminate 3 of the choices, if you eliminate 2 of them, then your odds are now 50-50 instead of 1 out of 4. So make sure you can identify which ones are false. Be careful reading the question, and particularly the all of the above and all except and not and things like that. You want to make sure you're identifying those. And last week I missed one of them when I was going through the brain walk, and I ended up with the wrong question because I forgot the not. So Nora recommends, and I think it's successful for some people, to read the thing backwards. Again, you got plenty of time. Don't stress. If you read each word individually backwards, you're less likely to skip over those words. Again and again and again, don't stress on the time frame. Take breaks, stand up, breathe, whatever. And then finally, at the test center, you have the ability to mark questions for review. So if there's one that you think you know, but you're not sure, or you have absolutely no idea, then instead of stressing about it, mark it, go through the other ones, get the low-hanging fruit, and then you can go back and look at the ones you weren't sure on and spend more time without feeling like you're rushing. Next slide, please.
Okay, thank you, Rick. So I think it's gonna be me. So so this is a slide for me. So this is my information about me, and I will be your facilitator today for the management and leadership. So I will be asking also Rick's help in the brain walk later. So and feel free also to put your comments, feedbacks in the chat box if you have anything that you want to add, or contribute to the questions or to the questions and answers. So I think we're ready to move forward with our management and leadership body of knowledge. So next slide, please. So for the management and leadership, these are the different vital elements that you have to know before taking the exam. So as I have mentioned last week, that we are not providing you the contents of this, but we are of the preparation for the exam, but we are providing you some how to do critical thinking. However, you need to know all of these vital elements, such as leadership and leadership styles, theories, those kind of stuff. Team building techniques, which is I would probably recommend Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Herzberg's knowledge on those. Change management principles, organizational development, those kind of the collaborative techniques, the diversity and inclusion. I would also like to remind you that there's a lot of resources in the ACHE website for the diversity and inclusion. So you can go to the website and talk about learn about diversity and inclusion. So next slide, please. Communication to team building. So change management. Those are important to know. The resource allocation, those kind of stuff. So there's a lot so that you have to learn for management and leadership skills, management and leadership before you'll take the exam. So I would really advise you to take this vital elements seriously, all of this, before you will take the exam. So next slide, please. So let's do the brain walk. First question for the management and leadership. So the purpose of a capital expenditures committee is, so this question really mostly in the finance aspect. However, since most of the questions are overarching with each body of knowledge, you can also see some question in this category about expenditures, capital expenditures. So that's why it's here. So selections are to oversee appointment of competent medical staff to render care for the service area. B, to appoint an effective governing board based on the wishes of the medical staff. To be responsible for evaluating and prioritizing requisitions for new equipment. D, to implement stakeholder wishes on the future direction of the organization should take. So I can see a lot of questions here. The answers here at the bottom, which we're in. They're answering C. So and the survey says, what's the next slide?
Well, Michael, can I add something here on this one?
Yes.
If you look at the words capital expenditures, that's going to be the key that you're looking at. And you get to the first one, and it's talking about appointing the medical staff, not capital expenditures. That's false. Appointing governing board based on the wishes of the medical staff. God, no, we're not going to do that, but we're definitely not doing it through capital expenditures. That's false. Evaluating, prioritizing new equipment. Yeah, that sounds like capital expenditures. True. Implement stakeholder wishes. Sounds more like strategic planning than capital expenditures. So just by looking at that word capital expenditures, I immediately eliminated the first two, and then it was able to eliminate the fourth one. So even if I wasn't sure what capital expenditures committee does, by getting rid of three, I've got the last answer there. C.
Yeah. Thank you, Rick. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is a lot. So as the tips a while ago, take a deep breath. Read the questions and selections carefully. So the U.S. healthcare industry is highly diverse, and to address the ongoing challenges of workforce diversity, an organization should A, expand the market share by adding or enhancing services that target diverse population. So before I'll go to the different selection keywords, I would like to do keywords here: diverse, and workforce diversity. That is a keyword in the selection. So mostly the question is talking about workforce diversity. So how would we enhance this? So selection A, expand the market share by adding or enhancing services that target diverse population. This is related to the type of your target, but this is more on marketing, so like segmentation and marketing. So I would not select that. I would eliminate.
Michael, it's also a good distractor for you because it's got the word diverse in there.
Yeah.
And that would lead you to think, okay, yeah, this is a good way to expand diversity. But if you've looked at the word workforce, you know that the population you're serving is not what the question's asking.
Yeah. So develop a linkage between the marketplace and the workforce that will enhance diverse recruitment, development, and retraining of employees. So I would not eliminate this. I would put that as a one, as probable answers. I'll just leave it there. And letter C, develop a diversity educational tools available both to the workforce and to the community. Yeah, possible. So I will not eliminate. So I got two selections here that the possibility. So D is develop and implement workforce policies and management practices maximizing the talent and productivity of employees with diverse background. So I mentioned before that if there's a high-end general selection, that is the best answer. So B and C are possible, but I would choose D here because it's the highest high-level selection that encompasses B and C. So if you look B and C, these are the strategies. However, the D is the main goal, the most general, objective of the organization to tackle under diversity or challenges in workforce diversity. So I would say my selection here will be D. So let's see if I'm correct. So next slide, please. Okay. So I'm correct. So because we have already eliminated A and possible B and C, but the D is the most general selection or general selection here. So next slide, please. Oh, another one. There's another one, lengthy question. So a transformational leader adapts and applies evidence-based leadership in their practice, and the application of evidence-based practice in healthcare management is more challenging compared to the clinical practice setting because. So let's go and analyze what the questions first before we go to the selection. So let's look at the keywords for this. So a transformational leaders, it's talking about transformational leader. So it's also it's asking in it's about adapting and applying evidence-based. So keyword is evidence-based leadership in their practice, and application is a keyword also there. So applying the evidence-based practice in healthcare setting. So it's more challenging. So it's comparing actually the application of evidence-based practice of a leader versus clinicians to the clinical practice, which is more challenging. So selection A, let's look at the selection A. So the culture in healthcare management is much less professionalized with much less formal body of knowledge and great diversity among practitioners. Is this true or false? Do you think true or false? I would probably say true. I will leave that as one of my selection. So the decision-making in healthcare management is supported by various support systems such as handbooks and guidelines, making it complicated. So healthcare management, do we have a lot of various support systems in healthcare management? Do you have a lot of handbooks like, like in the clinical practice settings, they have a lot of guidelines? Do we? I would probably, that's a question mark for me. So the C is the difference of the context or content of research evidence from a clinical perspective to management perspective is not comparable. Yeah, this is true because this is actually, this selection is a distractor. It's just comparing the research evidence versus the research evidence from a clinical perspective to a management perspective. So it's a distractor for me. So in the D, the culture in healthcare management is highly professionalized with strong formal body of knowledge. Do we have a highly professionalized body of knowledge or anything that is professional or more structured in healthcare management right now? I don't think so, right? So I have eliminated D and B here, but I would probably choose A because the culture is much in healthcare management is much less professionalized. Like there's a lot of healthcare there's a lot of healthcare leaders, and the practice is very diverse. That's how I see that. So that's why I'm choosing A because it's more challenging to apply the evidence-based leadership in the healthcare management compared to the clinical practice, wherein they have more standardized, evidence-based practice. So let's see what's the answer. Next, A. So Rick, any comment on how did I came up to this answer? Or
Yeah, Michael, Deborah had her hand up for a question, and then I want to go back to the previous question for a minute.
okay.
Thanks, Richard. So in reading this question as a test taker, I'm a bit confused because in the question, where is the question? I read that question and it's a statement. So in my 4 answers that I have, what am I looking for? Something that would substantiate that statement?
Something that would, go ahead.
Yeah, I think they are assuming that it's correct. I think that's a good reading of it. And the thing is the because, right? Why is it different in clinical than in healthcare management? Which means that you're not able to say, no, it's not. They don't give you that option. But so you are trying to come up with something that justifies their argument that it's more challenging.
Good question. Yeah. So we're gonna go back to the next previous question.
Previous
Rick?
one, someone had a question there about why not C? And D is the right answer, but why not C? And I would say that it's less, it's not that it's wrong, but it's less right. So diversity education tools, I'm not sure what that means. Is it clinical education? Is it health ed, prevention, or is it training? If it's training tools, why are they available to the community, right? So it doesn't give as much of a direct application to the workforce. And if you go back up to the question, that's really where we're focusing, is the workforce diversity, not diversity in a more general sense. So that would be my answer of why C is incorrect.
Okay.
Thank you.
So fourth question, please. An effective disaster preparedness plan, including triaging, arriving, injured, coordination with other community resources, and A, hours of operation, an active command center structure, payment for hospital personnel, or regulatory approval from CMS.
Well, I'll take this one, being a disaster person.
Yeah.
So hours of operation, well, your hours of operation are driven by your situation, right? So if you've got thousands of patients coming in over an entire day, that's your hours of operation. So you're not going to really set up the plan ahead of time to say we only operate during business hours. An active command structure, yes, that is one of the basics of a disaster plan, is you set up your system of who's in charge. So that looks true. Payment for hospital personnel, keep the CFO off your planning committee. But yeah, we have to think about that, but we're not thinking about it ahead of time because we have to provide the service. We can't look at how we're going to do it. We'll look at retroactive payment later, but not as part of our planning. Regulatory approval is actually an interesting distractor because CMS does require that you have a disaster plan, but it's not part of the plan. So the plan is saying, the plan includes triaging, coordination, and it's looking for another thing that's included in the plan. CMS is not. So I'm going to say that we've got false, true, false, false, and I'm going to go with B. And by the way, if you look at this and you say, I have never done anything with disaster, I don't even know what a command structure is. FEMA has free classes available. They're about an hour and a half each. And if you haven't had ICS 100 and 200, take the time, and that way you get the terminology that will show up, not just on the BOG exam, but elsewhere in life too. Next slide. Michael, you're muted.
I'm sorry. And also you can go to the internal policy. You're in your hospital. It's that's how I've learned when I took the exam. I went through our policy, so and it's really helpful. So next question is committees are an important management tool primarily because A, they provide a mechanism for reconciling differing opinions and facilitating decision making. Maybe yes, yeah. B, they are the only way of providing for intra-staff communication. False, because there's different ways of providing ways how to communicate with the staff, right? And C, they keep staff to update on new professional developments. I don't think, yeah, mostly it's not, from the committees, but from other sources too, that the staff are, updated on the professional developments. And D, they ensure self-expression and participation by staff. Probably, minimal only, but the best answer for me here is I would choose A. And people here are choosing A also, and the correct answer is A. Any question on this?
Yeah, the reason I don't like B and D and I eliminated them as false was the only way, right? If they're saying it's the only way, that means there's no other way of doing it. And, pretty much you can eliminate those. So, never say never, never say always. And then D is similar. They ensure implies 100% to me, right? So not they do promote self-expression, but they don't ensure it. It's not guaranteed. So I would eliminate B and D just on that. And then I've only got to play between A and C. And yes, A is definitely the better answer of those two.
Yeah, and the question also, if you consider the word primarily, so the main objective or main goal of committees, or that's the word primarily also really is a keyword there that you have to see, or so that's why A is the best one. So next question, please. Next slide. Okay, so which of the following statements is in accordance with the principle of delegation? So delegation, we are talking about delegation here. A, the executive who subscribes to the principles of delegation knows what he or she wants to accomplish and exercise control over the work schedule of subordinates.
When I read that, when I went back and I looked at the question again to make sure that was not there, because A is giving you the opposite of delegation. So I wanted to make sure I read the question correctly.
Yes. So, and B, an executive explains how he or she wants things done and points out how the subordinate's contribution fits into the overall plan. C, A successful executive gives instructions, telling subordinates exactly how and in what sequence things should be done. And D, in applying the principle of delegation, an executive makes relatively few decisions personally and frames orders in broad general terms. Yeah, I'm seeing D here. So let's go to each selection. So A.
All right. That video service is not yet available on this device.
Who's doing the video, please?
That was me.
The executive who subscribed to the principle of delegation knows that. So this is more on control, right? Exercising control. A is, it's talking about, control. Also in B, points out how the subordinate's contribution fits into the overall plan. So the executive still has something to say, right? And C, it's the same. The subordinate, the executive is still giving instruction. It's still he's still influencing the decision of the things. However, in delegation, once you delegate, you lose all your control. So you are empowering, you are delegating, you are giving the duties and responsibilities to to your subordinates. So A, B, and C are false for me because it's still the executive is exercising some degree of control to the decision making. So the right answer for the best answer is letter D for me. Next slide. Rick, do you have any comment on this? Delegation.
No, that's correct. Exactly.
Okay.
It's the first three are saying no, you're not delegating, you're telling people, and you're telling or selling, and D is the only one that really is addressing delegation.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Next.
Deborah
a
looks like she
comment.
has a question.
Yeah, not a question, just a comment. There was a book I read many, many years ago on from a corporate executive, and he said the best way to delegate is to think of how, when, where, and why. When, where, and why is the framework that we give, and let your staff surprise you at how they get it done.
That's a good point. Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so which of the following is not an executive office function? So, there's a different types of executive office function that you have to know, and, you have to learn actual differences of those executive function. I myself, when I took the exam, I was just really, really confused about this. So, so A, control, B, lead, C, support, or D, represent. So any wild guess here? So we're seeing E on the chat box. It's not. This is the key. It's not. So there's a word not there, not an executive office function. So survey says the answer is, I think A, which is when the executive office function, they don't control, they just mostly they delegate through the chains, right? So they lead, they support, and represent. They lead the organization, they support the needs of the organization, and they represent the organization in any social function, government function. So those are the main function of executive office. Control goes to the subordinates. So no. Is that correct, Rick? I
hate this question, by the way, just to let you know, because I think they're saying this is what it should be, but I think we certainly know enough micromanagers in our lives that there are people who think, yeah, that's my job, is to control everything happening under me. So we know that's not necessarily effective, but it doesn't mean it's not there. And that's why I think it's the worst of the four answers, but it doesn't mean it's 100% wrong either.
Yeah.
Which makes it a bad question in my mind.
And the executive office can be the governing board, right? So the governing board cannot control the organization. They can lead, support, represent, but
yeah, I was thinking more of C-suite.
Oh, the C-suite. Okay. Yeah. And any feedback from the group about this question?
Just one comment from me, Michael. I think I agree with Rick. A lot of times in our lives, as we start working with the C-suite or our own bosses, this may be a standard behavior or expectation. So we also kind of grow into that expectation as we move into our own roles. Very few organizations have priority in reviewing executive performance in that regard, saying, well, are you controlling your people, right? Unless it's a complaints going up or whatever. But officially, if you look at how the executive office should work and the whole purpose of delegation, this is where it misses the boat. We see several people kind of, I mean, they're still effective leaders, don't get me wrong. And as Vic pointed out, it's not wrong. But I think from what it should be, it should really be this one where, you're really giving up your control to your subordinates, to your managers who actually have more empowerment from you.
Okay, thanks. Next slide, please. So what is the correct order of stages for accomplishing organization change? So this is more change implementation or change management. So this is a question related to how to implement change, and you need to know the chronological order for implementing change. So there's a lot of answers there. They're saying A. So A, identifying, planning, implementing, evaluating. B, planning, identifying, evaluating, implementing. C, evaluating, planning, implementing, identifying. Or D, planning, evaluating, identifying, implementing. So one of the technique that I usually apply for any question which is relate or type which is the same like this is, if I know the chronological event, I will start with the first and the end. So for change implementation, the start is always identify, right? So A is always identified, and I would eliminate all the selection that doesn't say identify on the first selection, and I would also look at the last step, which is evaluating. So I have the identifying and evaluating at both ends. So I would choose A. So if I don't know what's really the chronological event for that, but be careful at the middle, because some selection they can still interchange the steps in between the middle. They can put implementing instead of planning. So just something to be careful when answering this type of questions. So
I use a similar approach, and it's looking at the first word in each of them and comparing them. So I say, okay, identifying, that's my first one. I don't know if that's first or not. I'm just starting with there. But does identify come before planning? Yeah, probably. Does it come before evaluating? Absolutely. Then we got planning again. So I've eliminated them even without having to think much about the order. I pretty much know that it's going to be A, and then I can look over it and say, does the rest of the order make sense?
Yeah. And
these are really confusing questions when you get the long list and what's the right order, and you need some way to narrow it down. If you know evaluating comes last, you can eliminate C immediately. And just depending on what the nature of the question is, but these can be very confusing questions when you first look at them.
Thanks, Rick. So the answer is A. Yeah, so A.
We both have been really embarrassed if it wasn't.
Yeah. So next question. Next slide, please. So in healthcare field, the accountability of management is best measured by the A, balance maintained between service quality and operational efficiency. B, results shown on the annual expense and income statement. C, balance maintained between physician satisfaction and patient needs. And D, degree to which management needs are met. So most of the selections are all important in the accountability of management, right? If you agree with me. Let's start with B. So we have annual expense and income statement. So we should have a good, positive results on that, right? Maintaining physician satisfaction and patient needs, that's very important. And degree to which management needs are met, it's also important. But the selection A, it is actually balancing it out, the service quality, which is the outcome. So the expense, income, physician satisfaction, and patient needs are outcome. So, and the operational efficiency also. So it's balancing between the efficiency of your operation and the outcome. So that's the best answer to this question, because you are balancing it out instead of you are just weighing in one side. So.
And the key thing on the first one is make sure you see the word best, because it's not saying that the others don't apply. It's which is the best one. And that means you may be faced with multiple ones you like and have to make a judgment there.
Yeah. So the answer is A. Yeah, so always balance it out. So, if you are in the C-suite level, always make sure that you're balancing it out between service quality and operational efficiency is the best. So as a best measure for accountability. So, okay, next question. So the cultural climate of an organization affects this recruiting procedure because, I hate this question. Sorry. So, A, it reduces employee turnover and absenteeism. B, organizations seek applicants whose attitudes, values, and goals are consistent with those of the organization. C, applicants who cannot support a given culture will be unwilling to work for that organization. And D, applicants look only to organizations that portray a positive cultural climate. So I'm seeing B here as the answer from the from the chat group. So are you raising your hand, Deborah? Oh, okay.
Michael, let me run through this one if I could. Obviously, it's starting with cultural climate, but it's focusing on recruiting procedure. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as you read the four of them, is that you're only looking at recruiting. So the first one reduces turnover and absenteeism. Well, that happens after they've been recruited and hired. So that one's going to be false. Organizations hire applicants who are consistent with its culture. Yeah, we know that's true. It's one of the reasons that we have to, we have trouble getting diversity in many organizations, is we keep hiring ourselves over and over. So that one's probably true. And again, it's seeking applicants, so that's recruiting. Applicants who cannot support a culture will be unwilling to work there. Well, that's hiring. That's not necessarily recruitment. It may impact how you target your recruitment to overcome that, but it's not the recruitment itself, so probably false. Applicants look only to organizations to portray a positive cultural climate. I'm not sure what that is, a positive cultural climate, but again, it's that issue of, is it the strongest thing in terms of recruitment? So A is definitely false, B is looking good, and C and D, if they're true, they're probably pretty weak compared to B. So that's why I would go with B.
And the answer is? Yes, B. Okay, thank you. Next slide. And in a dispute between two staff physicians, the primary role of the chief executive officer is to, as a representative of the governing authority to mediate a dispute, avoid any involvement in the dispute. C, meet with both parties as soon as the problem is identified. And D, request the appropriate chiefs of staff to investigate and report back. So this question is more on chain of command, right? So it's pretty obvious, but still go through the selection. So as representative of the governing authority to mediate a dispute right away, I don't think so, right? You have to investigate what's happening, what's the issue before you go through that, if it will lead to that situation.
I mean, you don't want the governing authority involved anyway in this stuff. That's getting them into the weeds, and that shouldn't be their job.
Yeah. So avoid any involvement in the dispute. It doesn't need to be avoid, but just don't probably investigate. You just need to have probably a certain knowledge or information about the dispute. So meet with both parties as soon as the problem is identified. That's not, as a CEO or a chief, that's not your responsibility to meet right away with them. It should be the D, which is request the appropriate chiefs of service to investigate and report back to you. So that's the best answer, which is you're following the chain of command, right?
But you're also maintaining accountability by the request that they report back. So you're not ignoring it, if it's something that's going to impact the organization, but you're not jumping right in to do it yourself.
Yeah, and the answer is D. Okay. Next question. I think this is the last one, right? No. For most members of a well-managed organization, the front office is A, source of authority, B, a source of a guide, C, a major stakeholder, D, a decision maker only. So the front office is mostly they're our front staff, right? So A, source of authority, it's false. B, a resource and a guide, probably yes. C, a major stakeholder, false. D, a decision maker only, it's false. So it's obvious the answer is, next slide.
I don't know that it is obvious before you hit the answer. So again, this goes back to an ideal type versus reality. And in many situations, yeah, it is a source of authority because authority in a hierarchy starts at the top and goes down from there. It has to be delegated to the different levels. So, you know, it really is a source of authority. But a resource and a guide is more of what we would like to think of our C-suites, that they're not telling us what to do, but they're enabling us to do our job. So ideally, it's going to be B, even though we know A is partially there. So B is probably a better answer, but it's not absolute to me as it might be.
So Rick, how do we define a front office? That seems generic, right? The way it's defined here. Think about a big
Yeah, that's a good
small
question. I mean, again, I'm thinking it's the C-suite, not the receptionist, but it's not the best word. I mean, I think they should have been more explicit about what level of the organization they're talking about.
Yeah, answer is B. Okay, next slide.
I hope it's not the receptionist anyway. I don't think they're asking that.
So I think that's it for the management and leadership. So we'll just, we are 3 minutes behind, based on our time. So we'll just go straight to the business knowledge. Is that okay?
And if you have any questions, throw them into the chat room and I'll try to answer them.
Okay, yeah. And we have Shashan to be the facilitator for this body of knowledge.
Thank you, Michael. Good to have you all this morning again. My name is Sachin. I'm currently the head of practice operations at a medical practice we set up a few years ago here in Modesto. And I've been engaged with Cal for 7 years or so. I've been in multiple committees with Cal, including Communications Committee, which I'm still a member of, and the Advancement Committee for the last 3 years or so. The reason I want to bring these up is that, part of what we see, I mean, I see personally as an opportunity to be a part of this is kind of helps you to learn the best from the best, but also learn the operations aspect of it. And I'm a good example of it because I may represent a smaller segment. So in this case, for the last 7 years, I've been more in an ambulatory setting, outpatient clinic, really. Which means that I'm not exposed to a lot of the health system complications or joint commission approvals or finance at a large system, et cetera. All of these are topics that are so integral to this exam. But at the same time, I think, being an owner and being in a healthcare setup, I have been having to kind of roll up my sleeves to do a lot of these things myself, right? Including contracting with health systems. If Nora isn't here today, but she's our other committee member who heads network operations for Aetna. And that's a classic example where I would be reaching out and having a direct communications with the network operations to develop a contract for our practice. I would be dealing a lot with hands-on patient care and patient communications, patient satisfaction surveys. For us, that's a critical piece, and we are so integral to the community that marketing and outreach is so critical for us. So that's again something we do. I have to do a lot of rolling up our sleeves, right? So the perspective that I bring to this table has its own place, but obviously Rick, Nora, and others who are joining our committees are bringing that outside perspective, which encompasses the whole of what we are offering. And ACHE and Cal have been great partners in terms of, for me to not only understand what's going on, but also where I fit in and how to leverage those relationships. And one of the things we always encourage all of our participants is to think about this leadership opportunity that you have to get this credential, but also think about giving it back to the community. That's the reason I'm here. I've benefited immensely from this program and from Rick and Michael and others. I'm happy to have you come back to us to help in any capacity for other members also to gain this knowledge. Awesome. I do have a technology background before I jumped into healthcare. As part of reasons why I'm also offering the technology presentation. I think it's the last session for us. Awesome. So the business side of it, the general topics here, again, as Michael pointed out, the domain knowledge seems vast, but as you can think through any healthcare organization, medium, large scale operation, you would see a lot of these being very strategic in terms of understanding the overall scope of it. So strategic planning, which is key for any size organization, but definitely on a health system where you have so many components, departments, but also strategic goals that you have to plan for. Business planning processes, key to actually executing, key to developing best practices. Also introducing any new service lines. These business planning processes are key to make sure it's done the right way, engage the right stakeholders, etc. Knowledge of basic business contracts. I think in a whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit organization and a business entity, you have to deal with business contracting, and that becomes super critical, especially because there's expectations of delivery of service. There are a lot of legal contractual terms that actually can affect your ability to deliver the care. So the commitments are critical. And if you think about healthcare as such, we work under so many of those regulatory requirements that we have to make sure that they are followed to the T, but also understand the overall scope of them because the financial implications can be humongous. In a small practice like ours, HIPAA compliance is super critical because all we need is one such lapse. And now I think the government is having like the penalties start from $25,000 or $50,000 for every lapse. So you can imagine how big of impact that could be in a smaller practice, but it goes immensely larger as a system, as a health system is bigger and bigger. So that becomes super critical. Knowledge of the impact of socioeconomic environments. I think healthcare compared to other industries has an important goal, right? In terms of social goals, in terms of how you are contributing to the upliftment, taking care of your social environment, providing preventative care to improve your community that you're serving. So the strategic goals, social goals becomes part of it, and figuring out every initiative and how it affects your social goals becomes very important as well. Knowledge of marketing principles.
Can I jump in there for a second first? Sure. I think this is a good example of how the 10 areas of the exam are not black and white silos, and there's a lot of overlap. The one that really jumps out at me is the contract one, because I always think of that as law, but they think of it as business. So don't get stressed when you see that type of overlap.
Great, thank you. I'll just run through this quickly in the topics: media, social media relations, knowledge of techniques involving negotiating contracts. Again, it goes back to what Rick was mentioning, and knowledge of impacts and consequences of business decision making. Again, business decision making is so key in every aspect of the business, right? So having an understanding of those on each of these operations, healthcare, human resources, it becomes so critical for our survival, as well as to meet a lot of our commitments to the community. That kind of gives you an overview of the topic. All right, let's move on to the questions. Again, please do feel free to put in your responses in chat. I would love to have Rick and Michael also add commentary, so we actually give you a better perspective. First question: which of the following is an uncontrollable factor in a marketing plan? Again, make sure to look at the keywords, uncontrollable, things that we don't have control over. It kind of helps you identify the right choices. Economic environment, possible, because I wish we had more control over where our inflation is, or where our market is going up and down. Budgets, to a degree, yes, you are setting your budgets, but in terms of how we control it, it really goes back to how efficient your processes are, so we actually can manage it better. Probably not. Personnel, again, you have a lot more control over it, setting the budgets as well as managing the team itself. But what we don't have certain aspects of personnel really is, how satisfied they are, and whether you have control over retention, things like that, right? So there's possibility for option C. Creativity, creativity is more, each individual performance and how well they are, or how we incorporate creativity into our own environment. It is supported by management, how much of flexibility is given in building those up. So in a way, there is an option to control there. So I was looking at economic environment being the most suitable in terms of a factor that's uncontrolled. Let me see. Let's see, the one answer is A. All right.
Dr. A couple people put down D, so maybe can you say something about why A is a better answer than D?
Sure. So the way I think about it, part of it is, creativity is such a general term, right? If you apply in a healthcare setup, what does creativity mean? It's how creativity can be applied at every operational process, efficiency, staff management. It could be a lot of those aspects. And you can get stifled in certain organizations where you're not empowering teams to really have the best way to incorporate processes efficiency-wise. So in that regard, it's not an uncontrollable factor in a marketing plan, because if you think about where creativity comes in, it's in the hands of, if you hire the right people within the department of marketing department, whether it's social media, outbound, inbound marketing, etc., it would still be in the hands of the team to actually execute on those creative initiatives once we do empower them. And the limit really is in terms of how well they can be creative in that. There are some regulations in terms of how far you can go in misrepresenting for some information, but otherwise there is no limit on what the creativity can be used for. So it's really in our control, whether it's the team itself or what the management empowers them to do. I hope that kind of clarifies.
For me, it's creativity. You can control your creativity in terms of making your marketing plan, right? So like if you're very creative and you want more elaborate marketing plan, you can control that. That's how I say it. That's why it's not a create. I would exclude that.
Great point. Next question. The element most critical to the successful design and implementation of an executive decision support system in a healthcare organization is. Let's make sure to look at the keywords. The element most critical, which means that some of them could still be relevant, but we're looking for the most critical one. Design and implementation of executive decision support system. So think about what an executive decision support system is, right? It's a tool, set of processes that your executives and C-suites can really use in making decisions across the board. Clinical care, personnel, human resources, things that they are setting at the highest level. Things they are setting up based on data that will affect the future growth of the company. A lot of those, right? Let's go through the options here. Availability of software for updating the database. Possibly, but it's more a technical ability there to that. It's not the most critical. Maintaining data confidentiality. I think data confidentiality is super critical in every business system here. Is it critical for a successful design? I wouldn't think so. Involvement of top management. I think it's definitely one of the most important ones. I think when we think about design and implementation of any project within a company, having the stakeholders being part of the organization, supporting it, training this, putting them on a good scale where every staff member or every leadership team is part of it, is critical in actually succeeding in execution of that project. A lot of times projects fail because you don't have a great sponsor, you don't have enough involvement to make it executed correctly. So that seems to be a good option right now. Availability of network computer equipment. Again, this is going back to option A, where it's one of the technical requirements, yes, but it is not the most critical in actually a successful design, plan, and implementation of a system like this. And this may be overlapped with like the technology domain as well, but it's definitely relevant to the business side of it. Let's see the answer here. Involvement. This also gives you kind of, another technique we have always recommended, which is always take a step back and look at what's the broadest response that actually helps us to define the response accurately instead of going into very specific instances. And that's why reading the terms like most critical gives you an idea, which is you have to look at which has the biggest impact in answering that question. All right, moving on. What is the fundamental reason for joint ventures between healthcare organizations? So fundamental as in the crux, the key reason why joint ventures exist, right? Let's go through the options here and see which ones we can eliminate quickly. They are allowed by EMTALA. So EMTALA, if you recall, it's a kind of Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, right? It's basically, making sure that hospitals do not refuse service for patients who walk in. So not really related to joint ventures per se, so we can eliminate that. They are formed because they offer legal routes to cooperative efforts. Makes sense. That's the whole purpose of joint ventures in benefiting each other, whether it's ownership, communications, stakeholder, share responsibilities, etc., to plan, initiatives or services that they can offer together. C, they are permitted as a means to share clinical and quality advancements. I think this would be a result of it, or really what it is what will come out of a joint venture, but it is not the fundamental reason. You don't go with that as the main reason where I want to start this engagement with two ventures because it allows us to share clinical data. Because at the end of the day, you need a business reason for it. It needs to align with your mission and goals. Those are the bigger pieces of why they should come together, and also understand what the resources are, what sort of resource costs are. So there are a lot of variables here, and C cannot just be one aspect of it being a fundamental reason. The option D, they are created to lower overhead costs. Again, a good example of why a joint venture may be beneficial, but a lot of times, you never realize that lower overhead costs as well. So looking at the options, I feel B is giving you the best option because it helps you have a broader definition of a joint venture.
Can I
Yep,
an argument why I thought it was going to be C? Even though I now see that B was the right answer, I should keep my mouth shut. But I think that if you have a hospital that needs expertise, they may joint venture as a way to bring in that advancement they haven't had yet. So I think that actually could be a good reason. And I was sort of fighting between B and C with a little bit of D. I
think that would probably fall under affiliation instead of ventures. Yeah. You some hospitals, they affiliate with each other to just tap into the clinical and quality advancement of other hospitals.
Yeah, but you bring in business associates, instead of people who are on your level, like a horizontal merger, you bring in someone who has specific expertise in that area. An example might be contracting with a group of intensivists.
Yeah.
Right? You need their expertise, so you bring them in. You don't necessarily have to affiliate with them, you hire them or joint venture with them or something on a new project.
Yeah, related to this question, also you have to really determine the difference between ventures, mergers, affiliations, because and those different strategies, because they have different controls. One's joint ventures, affiliations, something like that. They exhibit different controls or or ownership between the two. So that's why I said clinical and quality advancement, maybe affiliation, because probably they're just affiliating. They still have the independency to operate their service.
Yeah, I think I could make good arguments for everyone except A. It's totally wrong, but yeah.
Very good point.
Are there going to be those questions? I'm sorry, there are questions that are just,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem like a right answer, and it's frustrating as hell. And you mark it to come back later, and
Yeah.
mess you up on the rest of the questions. Just move along, come back to it. You'll have plenty of time. And Deborah has her hand up.
Yeah, wouldn't it be that you take into consideration not only looking at the word joint venture, but it's between healthcare organizations, not programs, not specifics, not metrics, but the healthcare organization as an entity?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's a good point.
So
And,
yeah.
Sorry, one quick comment. As Rick was mentioning, I have volunteered a couple of times with ACHE on the exam writing committee. I think Michael did as well, where we are kind of contributing our time to create questions for the exams. And one of the goals from ACHE's point of view really is to make it easier for applicants to really understand the options and not throw them off. And it kind of, I raised my question saying, well, even my exams and all the samples I've seen, using terms like all accept or things like that, always going to throw off people. But the goal there is really to make sure they understand the options, but also it's more like a reading comprehension, right? Did you read the question kind of aspect of it? But I think options like A, where it's a valid option in terms of having you to read it, because we do want to make sure it gives you what the definition of EMTALA is, and you should be able to apply that to be eliminated in this.
I eliminated that one because it said fundamental reason, and something being allowed isn't a reason to do it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you. Moving on.
Sashin, I have a question. Are you guys also looking at the use of terminology that can be confusing? Because as we're going through some of the questions, we're seeing front office, where it can mean front office management or clerical staff. Even the word control, I work in finance, and anytime I see control, I know we're talking about money instead of literally having control over people. So I think some of those things can throw us off too.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. As I said, I think even I was kind of a little confused about the definition, and it was referred to in lower case front office. So I think, yes, we definitely should take it back in terms of looking at our questions to see if it helps us clarify to ourselves as well as for you all. Thank you for that.
So should ACHE.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Next question. All right. When contracting for services, an organization typically finds the best value when? Let's see here. Contracting for services. So it's a healthcare organization looking to contract with an outside organization, assuming here. What does that mean? So option A, the organization creates an internal auditor position to oversee the service. So internal auditors, that's, from my mind, it's not the purpose of an auditor. The auditor is looking for checking how well your processes are, how efficient they are, but not necessarily involved in actually contracting process itself. So I'll probably eliminate that. A board member negotiates for discounted services. Again, I think Rick's favorite, we should never get board involved in anything at this level. option C, the organization allows the prospective supplier to develop the contractual service expectations. It's a definite no-no. We don't want to have the supplier develop them, but definitely, the cases where we want to collaborative, I would really want an RFP in terms of defining what the organization's expectations are based on, what the project is, what your missions, goals are, but not necessarily doing it, having the supplier actually define those. And option D, there is a competition between several suppliers when proven performance, with proven performance and reputation. That seems to be most appropriate because the goal here is an organization looking to contract for services. And we want to not necessarily go with the first one that comes into a response. We definitely want to have a good a set of options to choose from where we can compare against each other, both in terms of service, quality of service, costs, success in the market, etc. Rick, any thoughts on those?
No, I think you nailed it.
All right, let's do.
So, quick addition to the letter D. Competition is good for suppliers because it will will get better pricing. That's for me, better pricing outcomes. So it's always good to have competition between suppliers.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. 5, when data is scarce, the best method of forecasting is to use one of these options. So we're looking at how would you forecast in general terms. In healthcare, there's so much of forecasting that you could do, or there's the need for costs, service quality of care, etc. So looking at these options, computer-based simulation methods. So anytime we have a simulation, it's basically database, right? So we're going to simulate the patient intake. We're going to simulate how busy the emergency department is. So it's based on data that's created by the computer, and it kind of tells you a way to simulate what the load looks like under different situations.
But it's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have data to set up your simulation, then you're not going to get anything out from it.
Right, it's a good point. Time series analysis. So, and if I look at these B and C options, it's possible that we may or may not have come across that. I've used it in our experience here. But the way I think about it is, whenever I see options like these, where 2 or 3 of those terms I have no idea about, just go back and see what the question says. It's talking about data being available or not available, and how do you do the forecasting. So there is, in this case, looking at qualitative, the first 3 seem to be more quantitative in that approach. It's based on data, and we're using some of these techniques, whatever they mean, to forecast. So even if we don't know exactly what these 3 options are, A, B, C, those, in my mind, fall into a quantitative-based technique to forecast what our loads are looking like. And all of those 3 do require data, because it's a forecast based on data that's produced by the computer. Number D, option D, is talking about qualitative technique in terms. So if you think of qualitative techniques like, let's say, focus groups or patient interviewing, these are techniques which have a smaller set of inputs where we are getting direct feedback through different means, but it's very qualitative. It's not a 1 or 2, it's not based on certain numbers. So, and in that case, it's not about data, it's really about quality, right? So just based on the question and based on eliminating the choices, I'm narrowing down to qualitative techniques, option D as the answer. How would you approach it, Rick?
I would approach it exactly as you said. I'm looking at the word data is scarce, or the term data is scarce. So I know I have to look for something that's not data driven. Well, as I said, A is garbage in, garbage out without data. Time series requires data. Econometrics is the most data heavy part of economics. So that one's definitely out. So even if I didn't know what qualitative was, it's the only one left.
Yeah.
So focus again on that word data and say, okay, it's scarce. What's the alternative?
Great point. All right, moving on. Most products and services enter a period of decline. Unless compelling reasons prevail, continuing a declining product or service is costly because of one of these reasons. So we're talking about a product and the decline of its period of decline, as in it's not relevant anymore, or you're starting to see whether it's a service or a product, less and less people are using it, or your revenue is decreasing for that product line. What would be what would basically be the appropriate option here for us to really stop that, right? Increased turnover of personnel will occur. If you think about continuing a declining product, it's very possible that customers are going to start complaining, saying, well, this doesn't do what I want. Can you add these extra features? And that will basically add more product costs, but you also need to have more customer support folks who may be forced to stay, get trained on this older version of the product. And it's possible that, they may just not like it, or they get frustrated and say, this is not the company I want to be with. I want to move on to some other company which actually has a better software that I can use, right? So an option A is possible. Continuation will set an undesirable precedent concerned with maintaining the status quo. Probably. It's not a precedent you want to set, definitely for your products. But as management, they're always looking for how you want to be relevant in the market, right? What problems are we solving? Does the problem still exist? Are there new problems we should be addressing? So that's possible. The program will consume a disproportionate amount of management time and delay the search for a replacement. That makes sense. I think in this case, as I said, as a product, if you have a product that's declining in its use and relevance and revenue, by continuing to support it, you are spending more time from customer service, engineering, or service personnel, and you're dedicating your time on that versus actually figuring out an option to look for a replacement. So far, C looks good, promising. The organization will be perceived as being insensitive to the marketplace. True. I mean, at the end of the day, if organization, it's supposed to be serving the communities and what their mission and goals are. And, part of understanding what those goals are is to review, whether it's environmental assessment, whether it's community health assessment, you're looking at what the needs are as of today, as of this year. So if you're still not addressing it and continuing to provide a service that's not relevant, it's very possible that's going to happen. So based on those choices, I see that C is the most relevant in terms of the biggest impact it will have. Rick, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if it's going downhill, either it's just smaller market share or it's being displaced by a new product or something, then you're going to spend a lot of management time trying to figure out what's going wrong and try to beef it up again, when instead you ought to just cut your loss and look for the next one.
Yeah. Right. All right, thank you. Next one, before submitting a business plan for a new clinical service line to the governing body, the plan should be developed by. So it's about creating a business plan and for a new service. What's the best approach? Recommendations from the finance committee on the basis of its estimate of income for the budget year. I think business plan does need input as a stakeholder from finance. So I wouldn't say finance would be leading it. So I probably would not choose it as of now. The heads of profit centers, considering each center's anticipated revenues and expenses with the CEO putting it all together. Profit centers. So it is relevant in terms of, which service line this is and which organization it falls under, and the heads of all of those providing input to it. But it's not just going to be about the profit centers, because there are always service line affects different organizations, and not some of them may not be a profit center. We should still want to have a bigger stakeholder participation in it. So it's kind of limiting here in option B. C, key executives, after receiving recommendations from the heads of operating divisions and key physician leaders. That seems more closer to how you would create a business plan, where you have all the appropriate business stakeholders and the operating divisions. And more importantly, I think I like the word key physician leaders, because in a service line, you want to have a clinical leadership part of that discussion, or in fact, developing the business plan. Let's keep that as one. Option D, the heads of operating divisions with the CEO putting it all together. It seems similar to C in terms of where we are having the stakeholders all coming together. Now, whether CEO is the one doing it, I don't agree with it. CEO probably won't be doing it. I'm choosing between C and D at this point. Where do you go, Rick, with this?
Well, I'm going to focus on should be developed by, and I'm thinking about who's included and who's excluded. Finance definitely is not the lead. They're participating, not the lead. Profit centers, as you say, is eliminating a bunch of other people who are impacted. Same with operating divisions, and the CEO, as you say, is usually not the one writing the plan. So I'm going to take a close look at C here. And there's a bias in the questions, I think, towards having people who are participants in the program participate in planning it. So, you have the question we had a few minutes ago on the executive, not executive coaching, what was it, on the computer system, the IT system, that it should have the users involved.
Yeah.
That same thing with setting up a computer system, as we'll see in IT, to have the users involved. So I think that this is the one that goes most in that direction of you get recommendations and participation from the operating divisions. And then if it's clinical, it's got to be physician leaders. This is the only one that mentions clinical people on a clinical service line. And then some key executive, maybe your strategic planning person or someone else would put it together. So that's why I think C is definitely the best answer here.
Right. Thank you.
So can I add to this question? So in selecting also some answers, or look at the selections wherein it's more inclusive. So and C is more inclusive. It's including all the areas, key people that needs to be contributing to the business plan. So in any type of questions, if you have the selection that is more inclusive, more proactive way, I would choose that's the best answer.
I don't know if that's true, though, for decision making. I mean, if it says, you should have the community decide what your strategic plan is, that's including a lot of people, but I don't think that's the way you're going to do it. So I think the inclusive part has to be driven by what the question is asking. So don't automatically go to exclusive, but kind of lean in that direction.
Got it. Thank you. All right, next. Hospital systems have many customers. Of the four mentioned groups of people or organizations below, which is least likely to be listed as key targets in a marketing campaign?
And make sure you notice the word least.
Yes. Least likely. Somebody who I would not prioritize in my marketing campaign, or targeting in my market campaign. Buyers, I know it seems very general term, but I assume here that buyers could be, your insurances, commercial, government buyers. Hospital systems are engaging with, all kinds of players here, but in that context, those are the buyers. Caregiver exchanges, possibly, yes. State government, would you be targeting a campaign to the state government? Probably not. Let's see the last option, patients. Yes, hospital systems may have services are exclusively, although patients at the end of the day are the ones who you're treating, not every marketing campaign is focused on that, but I see that patients being in the center of it, definitely. So I see D definitely is true. Remember, what we're looking for is the least likely option. So probably buyers are obviously key part of it. Caregiver exchanges, yes, you probably want to have some, partner or contract with them to help with your patients. So that's definitely doable. I think at this case, I think state government seems to be the odd option out because you're not really targeting state government unless it said something a state government payer, for example, or a state government insurance. But I think it's a pretty broad term to say state government. That's where I would go.
And James brought up the fact that state government as an employer, is a buyer and therefore potentially could be. They're probably still the least of them here, but least doesn't mean none.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to remember when Medi-Cal was first put out to bid, and they were going into each area and contracting directly with hospitals. And definitely at that point, you were targeting state government, but again, not the most likely.
Right. Thank you. All right. We are running short of time. Let's see the last couple of questions. Environmental assessment or environment scanning is a formal surveillance review of the organization and its environment. All but one of the following should be taken into account by the planning unit. So again, make sure don't miss the term all but one should be taken into account. Environmental assessment is something that organization should undertake to review all factors that in a way they're not in their control, right? That they should be making sure to consider.
Part of your strategic planning, always perform environmental assessment.
Yes, it's true. Community demographics, epidemiology, and economy. Yes, very much so. Trends in physician availability, definitely. I think key to any healthcare organization is your engagement either through as employees, contractors, consultants, especially on those physicians. It becomes critical even as you consider adding new service lines or things like that. You want to make sure to see where you are, where the market trends are in terms of hiring or availability. Niche strategies. This is, I think you're focusing on, okay, what are in the market that I want to pursue as niche strategies, and whether this is something a more proactive initiative where you want to specialize in, but I don't think this is really an environmental assessment that is going to be key for an organization in my mind.
Yeah, niche strategies for marketing plan.
Well, the reason that C is wrong is that it's not done as part of your environmental scan. It's part of your strategy that comes based on what you found.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
It comes after. It's a result of the plan, not a basis for the plan.
Right.
Where the other three are all bases for the plan.
Right. I think the planning, the part of that in the question where it says planning unit, that's pretty important to think about that way. Patient/community attitudes. I'm not sure what attitudes is. Maybe preferences, maybe needs, the way I see it. But that's very critical. That's part of what you're there for, to serve the community. So that's important to understand what their changing needs are. So I'm leaning towards C, which is the one that I would not consider as part of my planning. Look at that. All right, moving on. A healthcare facility can best meet its social and economic goals by, let's see, developing a realistic and coordinated approach to long-range planning. True, anything to do with goals, it has to be long-term planning. B, devoting most of its efforts to the development of efficient operational practices. I think it comes it is part of your execution, but not necessarily planning aspect. But again, devoting most of its efforts on that is not going to cover all of your social and economic goals. So
The word most is what turns me off to that one.
yeah, exactly. It takes you out. Having a good public relations program, which will focus the facility in the community. Again, I think a PR or a marketing campaign isn't going to help you meet your social and economic goals exclusively. It's a tool. It's definitely an awareness that you need to consider as part of your execution, but it cannot be the focus. Option D, providing all reimbursable services desired by the community. Again, it's going to be tough, reimbursable services, but also that doesn't solve all of your social and economic goals.
Plus the word all.
Yes, anytime you have all, this is also Rick's always cautionary tale about keep an eye on those terms when they have blanket coverage of all these things. So the best option looks like, let's see, A, because it's more a planning approach and a long-term approach. Right? I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So do let us know of any questions here and with regards to both the topics.
Okay. Right. So we apologize. We are 3 minutes over. So we thank you for being with us today, and expect the post work email to be sent to you on Tuesday, recording of this discussion and some additional resources that will help you to prepare for the exam. So thank you, and we hope to see you again next week. Third presentation or review class. So thank you, and have a good weekend.